Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Tal Ben-Shahar, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Shortcuts to Happiness, Life-Changing Lessons from My Barber. Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar taught the largest course at Harvard, Positive Psychology, and the third largest, the Psychology of Leadership, attracting 1,400 students per semester, which is about 20% of all Harvard undergraduates. For the last 15 years, he has taught leadership, happiness, and mindfulness to audiences around the world. He's a co-founder of Happiness Studies Academy and the author of 6 books, including the international bestsellers Happiness and Being Happy, which have been translated into more than 25 languages. So let's welcome to the show, Tal Ben-Shahar.
Thank you, Marianne. Great to be here.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you here. And so your book, I mean, my goodness, the subtitle's Life-Changing Lessons from My Barber. So, I mean, did your barber know that you were doing this book?
No, he didn't. So it just, went for a haircut. It was after I was not feeling great. I was just before a flight, and after a flight, I was exhausted, and I went in for a haircut, and I came out after 20 minutes rejuvenated, felt great, and I thought to myself, he does this every time, and not just to me, but to other clients. And I said to myself, I have to write a book about him, which I started doing then, and then for 2 years, I wrote it and didn't tell him.
Was he surprised then when you showed him the book?
Yes, he's rarely speechless, but he was speechless then. Yeah. So before I actually published the book, obviously I asked for his permission, telling him that this is a co-authored book for all intents and purposes. So I needed his permission, which he gladly gave.
Oh, he has to be so delighted that all these tidbits of wisdom have boiled down to this book with you,
Yeah, the reason I didn't tell him during the 2 years was because I wanted to maintain authenticity, his authenticity. I didn't want him to change and what I've noticed since the book came out is that he hasn't changed. He's just the same, which only reinforces my commitment to his wisdom.
Well, he's got some great information. It is a fabulous book. And, I was really shocked with some of the statistics when you talk about just, there's a little discussion in regards to, like, how people now are much more miserable than they've ever been.
Yeah, so this is actually very, very scary, to put it mildly. I'll just share one statistic. So this is Jean Twenge. She's a professor at the University of California, San Diego. And what she showed was that levels of depression among the youth over the past 5 years has gone up by over 30%. Suicide levels have gone up by over 30% in that same age group among teens. Now, this is unprecedented, this rise in these particular statistics. And the reason is, according to Professor Twenge, is what she has come to call the ascendance of the smartphone. And the reason is that we no longer have face-to-face, heart-to-heart relationships. More and more of our relationships are online. And unfortunately, 1,000 friends on social media are no substitute for that one real BFF.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, having that interpersonal communication with someone that's sitting across the table from you, or you're having a cup of coffee with, or you're just in a group having a conversation and being fully present, there's no replacement for that.
Yeah, there isn't. And Lord Byron many years ago wrote, "Friendship doubles joy and cuts grief in half." And there is so much truth to that. So we enjoy our highs even more, and we're better able to deal with our lows when we're not alone.
Well, and since you're kind of touching on that, I would love for you to expand on how relationships impact our happiness.
Sure. So, there was fascinating research done by a group of Harvard scientists over the past 75 years. It's called the famous relationship study. And what they did was they followed Harvard graduates as well as members of the community just next to the university. And they looked at literally millions of data points, how they led their lives, what they did, how happy they were, how healthy they were. And what they found after 75 years of collecting a lot of data, they found that there was one predictor for happiness and the same predictor for health. And that predictor was the quality of their relationships. Now, the interesting thing in this research is that it didn't matter what relationships, meaning it could be a romantic relationship that kept them going over all these years. It could be a family. It could be friends. It could be colleagues, intimate collegial relationships. It didn't matter. But relationships predicted both health and happiness. And that says a lot. We spend so much time, so much money trying to become healthier and happier when the best generator of these two variables is the quality of our relationships, which is accessible to us if we just invest time and effort in it. And unfortunately today with social media, that is just not a good substitute.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I know you probably talk about this too, but we're in such an age where we're so connected, but so isolated at the same time. I think people are having a really tough time navigating through that.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, we need to disconnect from technology at times so that we can connect to people. And, don't get me wrong, I'm not against technology. I think it's wonderful. The fact that we're speaking now and people are listening, that's thanks to technology. I can listen to the best lecturers, the most amazing performers in the world thanks to technology. I just recently met my best friend from when we were 12 years old. We hadn't seen each other for over 30 years. And because our parents moved countries, and we met again thanks to social media. So I think social media is wonderful. Technology is wonderful in moderation.
I agree with that. I've connected with a lot of people from elementary school to high school, mm-hmm. and it's you would otherwise not be able to have those connections. So it's a nice way of being able to kind of reconnect with people that, before we had cell phones that you wish you could have when, like your kids,
Yeah.
Well, and so, and it's interesting when we talk about happiness, there was a discussion also, you talk about how words of praise might actually be causing greater unhappiness and stress with children. And I was surprised to learn that.
Yeah, this is, there are a few books that I've read over the years that I can say they really changed my life in a meaningful, significant way. One of those books is a wonderful book by Carol Dweck, who's a professor at Stanford. And she talks about, the book is called Mindset, and she talks about two mindsets that parents or employees elicit in others. She calls it the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And what she essentially found is that when we praise children, by the way, the same applies to adults, but with children even more so, when we praise children for how smart they are or how beautiful they are, that in the long term, not in the short term, but in the long term, has a negative impact on their happiness and success. Why? Because if someone tells me, let's say I do well on a math test and I come home and my dad said, well done, Tal, you're so smart. Now, what do I have to do with this praise? The only thing I have to do with that is maintain his belief about me that I'm smart, which means that I will not challenge myself, because if I challenge myself, it means I increase increase the likelihood of failing, and then maybe he won't think I'm smart anymore. So I become protective and risk averse when it comes to work. In contrast, if my dad tells me, "Wow, you worked so hard, you invested so much preparing for this test," and if it is indeed true, then this simply reinforces my belief that I need to work hard or even harder. So the first praise, when they praise my unchangeable or immutable trait, "You are so smart," that actually has a negative effect. When I'm praised for the hard work that I put in, that has a positive effect. The former leads to a fixed mindset. The latter leads to a growth mindset.
Well, we definitely don't want to stifle the growth and the kind of authentic growth of children and not stressing them, because you hear about how, children are just immensely stressed, and there's kind of an epidemic with them having anxiety and not really being able to deal with the pressures that are put on them.
Yeah, and there are a few reasons, or many reasons for that. One of the reasons is because more is expected of them. So, in order to get into a top university in the past, you needed good grades and maybe one extracurricular activity. Today, that's no longer enough. You need top grades and to be a president of this organization and a varsity athlete in this sport and on and on. And kids are just put under so much pressure. So this is one of the reasons why kids are experiencing more stress. It's why you see, whether it's in Ivy League universities or elsewhere, students who are experiencing stress to the point of not functioning. I'm not talking about just the regular stress that we all experience on a daily basis. This is stress to the point of not functioning. It's debilitating. So that's one reason for the stress. The other reason is because children today are praised too much and praised in the wrong way. Because we were told, or parents were told years ago, that you want children with a high self-esteem, tell them how great they are, how beautiful they are, how amazing they are. That actually can backfire, as Carol Dweck shows in her research.
Sounds fascinating. It's really important information for people to understand, because once you discuss it, you can see how that would be a problem, and how just a change in perspective and language can really kind of help soften some of the stresses that children are facing.
Yes, exactly right. This is just more broadly, so my field, the science of happiness. What it does is look at these questions and some ideas that seem commonsensical. I mean, it seems perfectly right to praise children in every way, make them feel good. And yet, once we look at the data, once we start researching, we see, well, actually, it's counterintuitive here, and maybe we need to think twice before doing something that was done to us as children, perhaps, and that we will that we want to pay forward. May not be a good idea.
Yeah, maybe something to really kind of think about. Well, and in your book, you talk about a topic that I would love for you to expand on. It seems like a lot of times people equate happiness with money, and they feel like if I have X amount of dollars, I'm going to be super happy because I can do all these things. And I'd love for you to share with us some of the myths about that.
Yeah, so there are many myths, and this the myth about money is actually a subset or a sub-myth of a much larger one, which is the connection between success and happiness. So most people, and this is when I say most, it's way above 90% of the population in the developed and the developing world. Most people believe that the path to happiness is through success. You become more successful, meaning you make more money, or you get a promotion at work, or you gain more prestige. This is the secret sauce to happiness. And this is also how they raise their children. So they tell their children may be miserable at school, being under all that stress that we talked about, but they say to them, don't worry. Now you're stressed, now you're unhappy, but if you get into your top choice college or if you get your dream job, then you will be happy. And for that, you need to suffer and struggle. This is actually not true. Success doesn't lead to happiness. Success leads to a temporary high, but it's temporary to the point that it will last for an hour or a month, but not beyond. So people, for example, there was research by one of my ex-colleagues, Daniel Gilbert, who teaches at Harvard, who looked at professors at the most important point in their career, which was just before they heard about tenure, whether or not they would get lifetime employment. Now, those, when he interviewed them before, they thought that once they get tenure, they'd be happy for the rest of their lives. They got tenure, they were ecstatic for a week or three. And then very quickly, they went back to where they were before, as happy or as unhappy as they were before. That attainment, this great success in their lives did not translate into lasting happiness. Same with lottery winners. You know, people think, okay, if I win the lottery, then I'll be happy for the rest of my life. I'll be all set. Not true. Lottery winners end up being happier than they were before for a week or 6 months at most. Very quickly, they go back to where they were before, as happy or as unhappy before they won. And it's a myth that is making many people unhappy because millions and billions of people are devoting their lives chasing the wrong goal, the wrong objectives, when actually happiness resides much closer to home than they think. But they go on a long trip away from happiness.
Well, and it really has a lot to say about also people being happy in the present moment with where they are. Because if you're happy where you're at, you're going to be happy anywhere.
Exactly. You know, in this respect, Oprah was right, as she often is. Appreciate, be grateful for what you have. Don't take it for granted, and you'll be happier. There's a lot of research today by the likes of Robert Emmons from UC Davis and others, showing that when we express gratitude on a regular basis, we're not just happier. And again, this is lasting happiness. We're not just happier, we're also kinder, more successful, and physically healthier. So it actually strengthens our immune system to appreciate, to savor the moment.
Was there anything that in any of your discussions with Avi that you were a little bit surprised and had to go back and do some more research?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things with Avi is that he's rarely speechless. He always has things to say. However, there are times when he is silent, when he's quiet. And I thought a lot about it. And you know, usually in our culture, there is some discomfort when there is silence. You know, we go out on a date and suddenly we have nothing to talk about, and it's a little bit embarrassing. Or you know, we're at a party and suddenly there is silence in the room, and people immediately try to fill up that silence. And Avi felt very comfortable in silence, and you know, it reminded me of a book I read years ago when I was in my early 20s by Robert M. Pirsig. Robert M. Pirsig famously wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and the second book that he wrote was Lila. And in Lila, he compares between Native American culture and Western or European American culture. And one of the main differences in these cultures is that we, the European Americans, feel very uncomfortable when there is silence, whereas the Native Americans would sit around the fire or in the community for hours on end, and just be silent. Look at one another, smile, and just be very comfortable in the absence of words. And I looked up research on silence, and I found that silence is one of the better predictors of innovation, creativity, and more generally, cognitive functioning, including memory. So when we fill in our time with more and more noise, even if it's valuable sound, we are depriving ourselves of creativity, of innovation, and of the gift of remembering.
And there's a lot that comes with that self-reflection when you have that time to yourself, where you're able to kind of just review things that have happened, and you kind of also talk about the importance of that. The way to growth is that through the combining between action and reflection. So that reflection comes in silence. At the same time, Avi is not an academic who sits in the ivory tower and and write books or contemplates the meaning of life. He is very active. I once asked him, why don't you want to expand? Because he's a very good businessman, and he's an amazing hairdresser, a barber, and yet he has one small salon. And many people over the years have come to him and said, "Look, we're willing to invest. Why don't you open new salons?" And he's always responding the same way. He said, "I'm happy here. I have everything that I need." And by that he means, when I asked him to elaborate on it, he says, "Look, I have friends, I have conversations daily, and I'm always learning." And he's always learning. He's asking questions, and he's always reading. And it's the combination of these two things that makes him happy. And when I thought about this, I thought, wow, so 2,500 years ago, Aristotle said almost the same thing. So Aristotle, one of the fathers of Western philosophy, said that there are two main components of happiness. One is friendship, and the second is contemplation. Friendship and contemplation. And Avi realizes and appreciates the fact that he has both in his work. That's so important, and I love how you have it broken down in your book, Shortcuts to Happiness, because people can pick that up and just pretty much read any chapter and get great inspiration. One of the things that I would love for you to talk about is how kindness impacts our happiness. Because, most people would think, of course it does, but I think some people don't really realize kind of the mindset that they have and how that's affecting their daily lives.
Yeah, so, one of the things, I was talking about the reflection and action, one of the activities that Avi engages in a lot is generosity and kindness, whether it's in terms of volunteering or donating money or just saying a kind word to people and making them feel good about themselves. And again, not because he read the research on it, because intuitively he gets it. He understands that it's the right thing to do, for others, and the right thing to do for ourselves. So there's a lot of research today showing that one of the best ways to enjoy a significant increase in our levels of happiness is by giving. For example, there's research showing that people were given two groups of people separately were given the exact same amount of money. One group, each one in that group, went out and bought something for themselves. The second group, they got the same amount of money, and they were asked to give that money to someone else or to buy someone else something with that money. And while both enjoyed a spike in their happiness level as a result of spending the money, those in the first group who bought themselves something enjoyed a very temporary spike, so less than 24 hours, whereas the second group that was kind, generous with the money, enjoyed a spike in their happiness that lasted over a week. So So being kind, being generous to others contributes to our own happiness, and of course to other people as well. Now, Anne Frank wrote back in the 1940s when she was 14 years old. She wrote, "You can always, always give something, even if it is only kindness." One of the things that I often say to my children is say to them, "Okay, today go out of your way and be extra kind. I know you're a kind person and you like helping people. Go out of your way today and do even more than that." And they do that and they benefit and the world benefits. It's a win-win.
Well, they have such a head start with a dad like you. My goodness, they're able to get that information.
It's funny you say that. I remember I have one of my closest friends. Her name is Shirley Yuval. She's a child psychologist, and she's my go-to person whenever I have challenges with my children. And I remember when David is our eldest kid, who's 14 today. When he was 6 years old, I remember saying to her, "Shirley, I wish I had known 6 years ago what I know today. I wouldn't have made all those mistakes with David." And she said to me, "Tal, don't worry, you would have made other mistakes." And there's a lot of truth to that. Is that we make mistakes. There's no perfect parent. Donald Winnicott, the child psychologist, talked about the good enough mother, which of course applies to the good enough father as well. We need to do our best, and the most important thing is express love and tell them how much we love them and show them how much we love them, and make our mistakes, and we'll grow from those mistakes, and they'll grow from those mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you do than that? That's such great advice. Well, Tal, where can our listeners connect with you, learn more? Because I know this isn't your only book. You've got a lot of great books on happiness. Where can they connect with you and learn about all of your books?
Yes, so my website is talbenshahar.com. That's TALBENSHAHAR.com. And there's a link to my books, to my online programs. And I'd love to connect to your listeners, and just also I would love your listeners to connect more to people around them. For me, perhaps the most important lesson from this past book that has really changed the way I look at life and my work in particular, and that is that there is wisdom out there everywhere. Whether it's the taxi driver, the person behind the counter in the store, or our hairdresser. There is so much wisdom out there, and we need to listen. Until I started thinking explicitly about writing this book, I would get most of my information from academic journals. That's what I do. I read them. I write books based on them. I go to lectures by leading academics. I read Aristotle and Lao Tzu, and I realized that there is so much wisdom in my barber, and by extension, there is so much wisdom out there just waiting for us to mine those treasures, to connect to them.
I bet Avi has a waiting list 6 months for people to get a haircut. Oh, my goodness. Well, Tal, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you, Marianne, and thank you for all the work that you do, spreading goodness and happiness.
Well, Tal, it has been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course to talk about your new book, Shortcuts to Happiness, Life-Changing Lessons from My Barber. Again, if you'd like to pick up a copy of Shortcuts to Happiness, you can at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.